thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you for joining us for this menopause webinar. We're talking about food, mood and feeling good through menopause. You might have joined us for the other webinar we did a bit earlier this year with Joe and Marva, which loads of interesting stuff came out. So I'm really excited today to have Joe and Marva back, as well as Melanie, who's a hypnotherapist at Reflect Hypnotherapy. So she's going to be talking about how hypnotherapy can help with menopause. And Janet, once she's here, is a nutritionist at Apples to Zinc Nutrition. She's going to be talking about the nutrition side of things, and there's tons of really interesting stuff about the effect of food on menopause. So I think it's going to be a really good discussion, and I'm looking forward to learning something myself. Janet, there we are. We have a full complement. Excellent. Thank you all. Thank you everyone else for your patience. We will get going because I know that you might be on lunch breaks and things, and I don't want to take up any more of your time than promised. So Janet, I've just sort of introduced the webinar, and if it's okay with everyone, we'll just dive into some questions because I think that's where the gold is going to happen. So we talk a lot to All Health Matters about how menopause, well, I think everyone talks about how menopause is different for everybody. Experiences vary widely among women. Some people don't get any symptoms, some people get all the symptoms, and most people are somewhere in the middle. So I want to ask each of you, and if it's all right, I'll come to Joe first, and then move on, how a personalised approach to menopause management benefits individuals, and how each of your respective fields can contribute to tailoring those solutions to individuals and where they're at in their journey.
Thanks ever so much for everyone for joining us again, like Alice said. So from our point of view at All Health Matters, we deal more with the medical side of it. And as Alice has rightly pointed out, everyone's menopause journey is very tailored to themselves, very individual. Some people get some symptoms, some people get some ongoing symptoms for a long period of time, and some people's symptoms can really affect their day-to-day living. So a woman's journey is very, very individual. The purpose for All Health Matters and our Wellbeing Connects was to provide something that was slightly unique to support women through their journey and tailor it to their needs. It's always been a hot potato subject, but probably, as most of you know, the last 18 months it's really picked up, and therefore we're really interested in tailoring a package that suits individual needs, and helps go through the process from the beginning to the end, and looking at different aspects and looking at a lady in a holistic manner. So our point is obviously just the medical point. So you potentially could start off with us with the blood tests, the screening packages, taking medical history. That's all very relevant to your individual needs and for us to path out a journey. But with All Health Matters, we wanted to introduce a holistic package that could fill in the gaps between your first point of call of testing to potentially the end of the road, which is not the end of the road, but HRT prescribing. There is a whole field in between, and this is where our lovely speakers come in, and we can support you to either complement that journey with us or actually support you in a pathway that is more tailored to you and not just sticking to the medical side.
Yeah, I think that's quite important, because we've talked before about, you know, everyone's experience of menopause is on a spectrum, but also your preferences are on a spectrum. You know, some people might be into the science and the blood tests and the, you know, the clinical side of things, and other people, you know, might not be interested in HRT or want to explore other options. So Janet, I wonder if I could come to you next, and if you could tell us a little bit about you know, about your experience with menopause and nutrition, and the sort of personalised approach to nutrition for menopause.
Hi, yeah, so yeah, hopefully you can all hear me.
Yes.
It's a good first step. So absolutely, I mean, you know, as you've all said, so completely individualized. And I think where nutrition is ever so powerful is that you know, we'll be doing generalized, when I work with people one-to-one, we're totally doing generalized hormone balancing. But for some people, it's massively all about the fact that they can't sleep. So I would be tailoring foods to really, really kind of reduce stresses and be, very, very tailored for relaxation and things. Whereas other people notice that their digestive symptoms massively increase. So then we'd be working very much on the gut microbiome. For other people, it's all about temperature, hot flushes, and then, again, we're working with completely different things. So, there's always going to be an underlying hormone balancing side of things with food, but it's what makes it really powerful is that we can look at your individual tastes, budget, but symptoms as well, and then we can really kind of package it just specifically to you.
That's really interesting, because I think a lot of people, certainly I didn't realise until I started doing the research, how much of an impact food has on all those things.
Yeah.
You think food is just sustenance, isn't it? But it does affect your sleep, and it does, it affects so many things.
Absolutely, it's incredible. And I mean, just to give you an example, like our digestive system makes 85% of our serotonin, which is our happy hormone. So if your gut isn't working particularly well, you're never going to have a great mood. And I know firsthand that going through the menopause is gonna be a bit of a problem with your mood anyway. So absolutely, food can really help to nourish that those microbiome that live in your gut, which massively has an impact on so many things. But
yeah, totally. It's wild, isn't it? And talking about mood, perhaps that's a good point to come to Melanie and talk to you about your take on this from a hypnotherapy angle.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very similar to Jo and Janet. It's a very holistic approach in hypnotherapy. It's quite practical. I'm solution focused. We don't really focus on the problem so much as about what we're going to do about it, what the solutions are. So you're working with individual clients at a pace that works for them to identify the kind of small changes, the things that we've still got control over, that move them towards where they want to be. And that can look very different for different clients. So for some people, that really is supporting them to manage those sort of day-to-day stresses that get in the way of going to see your GP, going to see a nurse, talking to a nutritionist, all those sorts of things that you need to do, but you just can't get yourself there in the moment. When you are feeling stressed, when you've got a lot on, you don't eat well, you don't sleep well. So getting to that place where you can make those decisions, the things you already know in a lot of cases, but actually supporting you to get there. And so the approach is quite similar. It's about reducing stress, but how we reduce stress is very individual to us. And what you want to do when you're in that place, when you're feeling a bit calmer, a bit more in control, is also very individual. So it is quite unique to the client and the way we approach it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it feels, although you're both coming, you're both meeting those menopausal women where they are. It's what am I trying to say? It's always like, you're coaching to get to the point where, Melanie, where people can take those practical steps with someone like Janet or with Jo.
Absolutely.
And it's all those little stages, and it's not just one linear journey that you go through. You might be going through this twisty turny thing every day. You start the day and you've got to make those decisions every day, haven't you, about what's good for you. And you might have a good day, you might have a day where you're really not feeling very resilient and you need an extra bit of support.
Yeah, that's very normal.
Yes.
And not beating yourself up about being normal as well, realizing you are going to have bad days. Just because you know what you need to do doesn't mean you're going to do it.
No, yeah, I'd agree.
Some people don't have the capacity.
And I think we've all said with our ladies, that guilt feeling. Our lives are so busy. Have we forgot the finance? Have we got the time? The family always comes first. Work commitments. As a group of ladies going through these type of emotions and feeling physical and emotional symptoms, it really can affect you on your path. So I've obviously been involved with All Health Matters for the year, researching it on a medical point of view, but on a personal level, the amount of information that I've started to learn for myself and I'm definitely at the start of my perimenopausal status. And I just put on my Facebook page last night about not sleeping and hot flushes, and then I was irritated because the dog was barking, and then I've had about 2 hours sleep, and I woke up this morning, drove here for an hour thinking I really need to sort my diet out. So I don't take the advice that I give out. But on a personal level, this is just the information that you can gain, and then you can start to really tailor your own journey and the information that these ladies can provide, which leads me to introduce, if I can skip, because it's right, Marva. I've actually used some of her products. I've run out, hence maybe why I didn't sleep very well last night.
Joe, have you not been using the sleeps right?
I ran out about 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh, I must speak to Marva. Yeah, hence, like last night, I need to speak to you live on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a menopause coaching counsellor, and I very much take the view with women that let's deal with what your issue is. So it's all about the personalisation. It's looking towards what the symptom that an individual has and tackling it symptom by symptom. I do think it's good to take a medical approach, but there is also a holistic approach because, as Joe's already said, as women, we are extremely busy. We're running households. We tend to get to an age at menopause when maybe our kids are in their teenage years or they're going off to university. Our parents are getting elderly, those that are fortunate to have our parents still with us. So the strains on us as a women become more and more because we're juggling more and more things. And one of the things I do really attribute to women that come to me is self-care is so important, and taking, even if it is something as simple as having a bath and taking that 10 minutes of me time, putting some lovely oils in, smelling the aromas of the oil, and just taking that time for yourself, you know, is so important. So I think it has to be an individual effect. No two women have exactly identical symptoms. I mean, the first thing most women say to me is, I have every symptom. Nobody has every symptom. There's far too many. When it may feel like it may feel overwhelming, but then it's really breaking down what is the issue, and that's what I tell people. Let's work on what is the biggest issue you have, what do you want to tackle, and by working one by one on those symptoms, we can get a 360-degree effect.
Yeah, no, you speak a lot of sense, Marva, and I know that you have helped an awful lot of women with their menopause journeys, and they're very lucky to have you, I must say. Just moving on to our next question, if I may. We're talking about education, and you know, I mean, Joe's talked about learning so much through researching for our menopause service. I think there's a lot of that everyone knows the headline topics, don't they? Everyone knows about hot flashes, everyone's heard of HRT, but there's so much more to menopause than those headlines. So, I mean, how do your respective roles sort of contribute to empowering women to learn and to understand and to get that information? Maybe I can come to you, Janet.
Yeah, sure. So I try, where possible, to take a lot of the kind of information that's out on the internet and try and kind of make it more realistic and understandable, and cut through an awful lot of the myths that are out there, but also a lot of the kind of the rubbish stuff. So with a lot of my clients, a lot of them do want to understand what's actually happening to their body, and I think by explaining that, even if we don't always get it right, even if we're having a bad day and you know you fall into a tub of ice cream or whatever it is, at least you understand what's going on in your body. And I think that really helps certainly on a lot of levels, certainly what Marvel was talking about. So I would be explaining to people about the fact that your ovaries aren't producing estrogen anymore, and that production needs to come from somewhere else, and the first place it's going to look is your adrenal glands. And if they are mega stressed, then they're not going to start wanting to uptake, you know, the role of making more estrogen. So the first thing they're going to do is say, we need a backup plan here, people. So what we're going to do, and the only other place that you can really produce estrogen from is your belly fat. So you naturally end up getting quite a thicker belly. It's not inevitable, but that's what happens. And so if you understand that, then when it comes to what Melanie and Marva and Joe are telling you about relaxation and the importance of reducing that stress down, then you're going to start thinking, okay, I really do need to prioritize that side of things, because if I do that, then it might help with kind of weight gain, weight loss, or avoiding the weight gain and things like that. So for me, knowledge is absolute power, and it really just helps to, you know, you can do your own research, but sometimes people are just, everything's just conflicting. So it's just nice to have it all in one place and then kind of add that so what to it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I guess there's probably quite a bit of correct me if I'm wrong, but there's so much guilt around food, isn't there? I mean, you know, diet culture, but if you understand the sort of the chemical, physical processes behind what is driving you to reach for that type of ice cream, you can give yourself a break a little bit easier.
And to be fair, there is no single one food that is bad. There is no one food, as a nutritionist, there is no one food that I say to people, obviously, and you know, unless you're allergic to something, you know, there's no one food that I would say you can't possibly have, because every food has got some benefit in some way to it. It's a problem if you have a tub of ice cream every night. It's a problem if you have a slab of chocolate every night, or a bottle of wine or whatever. But you know, every food gives you something. Yeah, mum guilt or woman guilt, it just does not serve us very well at all, but it is so high.
Yes. And Melanie, I'm guessing you probably sort of deal with the guilt side of things with people a lot. What's your take on that?
It is unhelpful, but it's easier said than done to stop feeling guilty about things, isn't it? I mean, I think education is really important. You know, knowledge is power. I spend my initial consultation explaining to people how your brain works, why we feel anxious, you know, why we might feel depressed, why we might feel angry, and particularly how that works with menopause. And it's all really about change. It's not surprising that we find menopause difficult to navigate, because it is all change, and human beings don't like change. If you ever read a list of the top most stressful events, it's all things involving change, and some of them are really quite positive, you know, new baby, new home, new job, new relationships, marriage. But the reason why we find those things difficult is because we use automation to manage our day-to-day, to cope with all that juggling. So if everything stays the same, even if it's not perfect, it's easy for our brain. It just follows the same old routine. You know, it's not a problem. So change feels stressful because it takes so much of the brain's energy. We have to build new routines, find new ways of being, so it's exhausting. So change is a lot less unsettling when we understand what to expect, what's happening to us. We're able to keep things more in perspective, feel more in control. You can think ahead, you can start to plan. It just doesn't feel so scary. So it's just easier to navigate a transition when you know what's happening to you. And also when you give yourself some grace, when you realise how much it's changing, how much your brain is dealing with, then you can be a little bit kinder to yourself when you don't manage the things that you think you should be able to manage easily, because you always could. And being kind to yourself is really helpful, because it just reduces your capacity. The more you think about these things and tell yourself off, the less you are noticing what you're doing right now and controlling what you're doing right now. And once it's done, it's done. Nothing can be done about that. So looking to the future and thinking about how you can change things is far more helpful.
Yeah, I think I love that about giving yourself some grace and being kind to yourself. I'm telling people that a lot, but I think we're particularly women that I know are so hard on themselves, and they think they need to be perfect all the time. And you know, if you drop one balls and you're failing, but actually, you know, everyone's dropping balls daily. It's just it's just life, isn't it? Life happens, and yeah. Practicing being kind to yourself can feel quite alien if you're not used to that, but it's a really good thing to practice.
And just recognising how much you are dealing with, even if you're not consciously going through menopause, you know, it's not on your list, but you are doing that, and you're doing it alongside everything else you're doing at the same time.
Yeah, totally. Marva, I'm sure you probably hear a lot about this kind of thing with your coaching as well. How do you deal with that kind of thing and educating and giving people knowledge?
Well, I think education is really important, but I also feel that there is so much information out there on the perimenopause, but there's not enough out there on the postmenopause. And one of the biggest thing I explain to all women is, once your estrogen and progesterone is gone, it's gone. It's not coming back. So for the rest of your life, you can have symptoms from varying different degrees for the rest of your life. So for me, it's important that they understand it's not just, and educating them, it's not just this period we're talking about, but the adaptations that they make now will see them through right into their 70s, their 80s, and if they please God, you become 100. And I think that's really important, because women don't know what to expect. The first thing women say to me, I just want it to be over with. And when it's over, I could get my life back. And I do take that time to explain to women it doesn't work like that. So I think it's really important that women are educated, that it's not just about the perimenopause and you losing your estrogen, but also what to expect once you're postmenopausal and everything is already gone, how you can get that protection, whether it's from food, whether it's from, you know, HRT, whether it's from natural supplements, whatever it is, because we're never getting that estrogen and progesterone back naturally in our body. We're going to have to find our own way of controlling it. And when we find that way of controlling it, we then need to make sure that any other things, like whether it's vascular dementia, whether it's our joints are aching, whether it's dry skin, there are so many different issues that are not talked about, you know, vaginal dryness, they are all to do with the estrogen and progesterone loss. And I think there needs to be more talked about the other symptoms, so women really understand what their bodies are going to go through, and when they come out the other side, what to expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to those, you know, the headline topics. Everyone is going to expect a hot flush, but you know, you get those other symptoms, and that can create that panic and that anxiety, because you don't know that it's related to menopause, but actually, you know, a lot of it is, but there are just so many. I mean, the list is huge, and I'm sure there are lots of different lists of varying lengths, but I've seen one with hundreds of symptoms.
My biggest thing is women come to me saying, I think I'm getting dementia, and I'm like, okay, let's not put dementia on first. Let's work out if you're getting brain fog, because a lot of women, it's nothing to do with dementia, but they actually believe they're actually getting dementia. And
that must be really scary, because you know, everyone's terrified of that, aren't we?
Exactly.
And then Jo, I mean, coming to you from a sort of clinical perspective, I mean, HRT can help with some of these symptoms, can't it? But there's you know, lots of information, misinformation. It's a hot potato topic, as you to coin your phrase. How do you help to sort of educate women around that kind of side of things?
Well, this is where it's been really exciting to work with everyone else, because it wouldn't be like the end goal, like Mother said. It's an ongoing situation. It's an ongoing symptoms that you potentially could experience, and it's really ongoing of self-care. So if you get to the stage where HRT is something that you've started to look into, have we looked into visiting Melanie for some relaxation pointers? Have you looked at that aspect of the symptoms you're experiencing? Marva, who provides some beautiful products, like I said, just whether it's a bath or some topical cream that are natural, and for the sleep easy, which, like I said, I can completely endorse. And then going back to Janet, looking after yourself when in your nutrition, even deficiency in your vitamins, like your B12 and your vitamin D, all them type of aspects on a medical aspect needs to be looked at. You need to be looking out we're at a time of our life where things are changing in our body, so you need to be ruling out and looking after your heart and your liver and your kidneys, and some of the testing that we do just double checks that they're on point. So if you've got to that stage and you've started to look after yourself in some self-care and look at alternative therapies, and you've come to the point where, you know, I really think HRT is something that I would like to investigate, we would be here to support you looking at the different options, because that in itself is a minefield. HRT, there's a whole range of different products, whether it's patches, gels, and again tailored to everyone that's individual. You have a lot of research out that was dated back many years ago that is stuck in ladies' minds about the potential risks of connections with breast cancer,
and
dementia.
it was wrong.
Absolutely. So very quickly, I won't go into great detail, but a lot of them research articles were flawed before they even began. Some of them were deemed they shouldn't have been published, and then some of them were published with missing information. A lot of the cohort of the ladies were much older ladies that had passed their menopause stage. They were post-menopausal stage, so then they were at higher risk of breast cancer. Things that weren't taken into consideration, medical history. There is a risk when you take any type of medication, whether it's a paracetamol that most of us would pop most of the days we've got a bit of a headache. There's always a risk of a rare side effect, and like I said, individually people are at higher risk genetically of taking certain medication, but educating us, providing you information to make an informed decision and an informed consent that's right for you. And it doesn't have to be always. If you get to the point that you start taking HRT and it's not of a benefit, or you've got any concerns, then you can come off it. But if it is, then it's a period of time that you might not be able to take it for a couple of months to a couple of years. Your symptoms have died down. The menopause, as you may be aware, if you were to take a blood test one morning, say on a Monday, and take your blood result again that afternoon or the next day, you could come up with significantly different readings, because the menopause and the hormones fluctuate to such an extent. So again, for our point of view, it's just providing as much information for you to be able to read up and be confident in your decisions, and us to support you and complementing that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's, on the HRT thing, everyone's got to make the decision that's right for them, but what you don't want is people fearing making that decision to take it if it is right for them because of all that misinformation. And there is, it's leading nicely on to the next question, which is around sort of misunderstandings and stigmas, because menopause comes with a lot of those, I think. So what are some of those prevalent misconceptions in each of your respective areas, and how do you help to dispel them? Maybe Marva, have you got anything to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception I personally feel is when women don't understand what they're going through, a lot of women end up taking, feeling that they cannot do the jobs that they're doing. And I think that's a really dangerous thing. And the reason I use the word dangerous is if women actually step down from the workplace or senior jobs because they feel they cannot cope, because they don't understand what's going on in their bodies, we're going to have a serious brain drain in this country, because they won't be able to impart their knowledge onto the next generation coming through. And if they can't impart their knowledge in the next generation coming through, we're going to have a severe skills gap. So I think it's really important, and that's what I work with women on, is finding the right coping mechanisms that can either get women back to where they want to be working, because a lot of them feel they're being pushed out of their jobs. Having really honest conversations and open conversations, because there have been women that have actually got back to work, or because I've counseled them, they've not stepped down from high profile positions, and it means they can continue. And it's just them understanding and not being overwhelmed, and then putting the right mechanisms in place, whether it's HRT, whether it's natural, whether it's acupuncture, whether it's, a food diary, whatever, food nutrition. It doesn't matter what it is, but until women actually can understand what they're going through, it's very difficult. And, people like Davina have made such a good job in highlighting the menopause, but where we're failing is where, on an individual basis, women want to know practical things that they can do as an individual, Or I still have women coming to me saying, I'm not sure if I'm menopausal, but this and this is happening. My friend told me to come and see you. Or they're saying, I think I'm too young for menopause. And they're like 51, 52. And I'm like, I think you're not too young for menopause. It's that misinformation that's out there. And it's still not in people's mind correctly what the menopause symptoms are, when they can start. And I think all of that needs to be somehow tailored, and that information given out more on a level that women can understand it. So when they start getting the symptoms, they don't think something's gone wrong with them. They don't think they need to give up their jobs, but they can seek the help in time that will mean that they can continue their career successfully.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's that self-worth thing, isn't it? And you know, perhaps where you help women, Martha, is helping them retain that self-worth, rather than thinking I can't even remember what happened yesterday, you know, how I'm no good to anyone, when actually, you know, with the right support in place, you don't need to struggle as much as you have been, and you are totally worthy, and you deserve everything and more.
Exactly.
Melanie, what about you, talking about misunderstandings and stigmas?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. I'm a menopausal woman with a teenage daughter, and they're still not teaching about it at school. So, you know, you quite often hit this age and you're suddenly thinking, what on earth is happening to me? So I see a lot of clients exactly the same, who are really dealing with the mental impact of it. And they're talking about mood swings, they're talking about fatigue, anxiety, brain fog. And I think most people do understand, thanks to Davina and everything else that's been going on, that, you know, those mood swings will settle, the fatigue will pass, you will get through it. But there's also this perception that the brain fog lasts forever. And it is that fear that, you know, maybe it is dementia, that, you know, this cognitive ability is just lost forever now. You're losing your words, you're walking into the kitchen, you can't remember why you went in there twice, 3 times a night, and getting really good steps from it. But it feels horrible, it's scary. And I think it's really comforting to know that it isn't actually a permanent change. There's several studies that have shown that actually, if you look at men's and women's cognitive function before and after menopause, it hasn't changed. We might be tired, but we are just as sharp. We are just as capable of doing exactly what we did before. We might need to take different ways of doing it. We might need to find our way around. We might need to use that vocabulary we worked so hard at when we were younger to replace the words that we've forgotten. And we're not imagining it. You know, those hormone levels do change our cognitive function. The glucose metabolism slows, but our brain compensates. So, for instance, our blood flow starts increasing in our brain. So although that brain is going through transition, it just needs time to adjust. You know, we've still got that cognitive function. I think that's really, really important to realise that actually, you know, we are just as good as we were before. It's just a change.
That's really Absolutely. Reassuring, isn't it? I do love a study, so I'm glad you've referenced a study there, because you always look like, oh, well, if it's in a study, it's got to be true, hasn't it? And Janet, I bet there are tons of misunderstandings around food and menopause, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. I guess, you know, in terms of misconceptions, people assume that weight gain is inevitable. I mean, it's common, but it's not inevitable. People assume that the only way to lose weight is to radically reduce the number of calories you're eating, or cut out food groups like carbohydrates and low fat. People come to me and say that they've, you know, they enjoy soya-based products, but they've stopped eating them now because there's a common misconception that soya is really, really bad for hormones, and, you know, they're not. There's all of this stuff. We need every single nutrient. We need the broadest range of nutrients. Yes, we might have to maybe change the quantities of each macronutrient that we consume, because as Melanie said, our propensity to manage our blood glucose once we start going through the perimenopause and beyond is a little sketchy. So, you know, we don't need as many carbohydrates, but we definitely need some. It's what the body wants for fuel. And in terms of kind of fats, we absolutely need those. Every single cell in our body has got an outer layer of fat. Our brain needs fats to make hormones. We need fats. So you can't go low fat on anything. You just have to have fully loaded, wonderful, high fat foods, just less of them. And then in terms of kind of your soya based products and things, they've got some really amazing components like isoflavones and phytoestrogens really help with hormone balance. So it might be about the quality of those foods that you're buying or the timing of the foods and everything else. So there's a lot of nutrition myths, and I do just try and dispel all of those and just tailor it to people.
Yeah, I wonder, you know, all this misinformation. We're in such a social media culture, aren't we? And so many influencers who are self-professed experts. Is that the polite way to put it? You know, putting things out that's only half the story for the content, for the clicks.
Yeah, and it might be just stuff that only works or that's worked for them, but there's no science necessarily behind it. And you know, I did 4 years worth of training to make sure that everything I do is science based, but you know, it has to be tailored. You know, no one thing is going to suit everybody because no one menopause journey is the same. It's
that's why it's so. Oh, sorry, Marva, you go.
It is quite scary because that's the biggest thing I have. People come to me and they're telling me all the people they've listened to on TikTok and they give me every single scenario, and I'm like, okay, can we just put that to one side and let's look at what your symptoms are? Because what happens is they're listening to the TikTok, the Instagram, and some of the people are self-professed experts, and then they want to give you their diagnosis based on the self-prescribed expert, and you know, it can be quite dangerous that people think they're self-diagnosing.
Oh yes, let's not get started on self-diagnosis and TikTok diagnosis, because that's a whole other rabbit hole. I'm very aware that it's 5 to 1 already and time has just flown. So I'm going to come to each of you for a quick fire. If you could just tell us, remind us who you are, tell us your website, and give us one really practical tip that everyone that's joined us today can take away and put into practice if it suits them, then that would be wonderful. Marva, can I come to you first?
Okay, my name's Marva, founder of Shush Menopause Wellness. My biggest tip for anybody is relaxation, bath time or shower time before bed, and relax. But most important, sleep is the most important thing, because that's the basis of your next day.
Amazing, thank you so much. Janet, give yourself a plug.
I am Janet Padfield from Apples to Zinc Nutrition, which is www.applestozinc.co.uk, and I'm all over Instagram and Facebook as well. My one piece of advice, there's so many to whittle it down to one, so I might kind of intermingle one or two. Okay. Is don't snack if possible, just eat 3 meals a day, and where you can, variety is absolutely key. If you can eat a rainbow of fruits and vegetables every day, you're halfway there for getting all of the nutrients that your body needs, and don't have too much sugar.
Amazing, thank you. Melanie, your turn.
So I'm Mel from Reflect Hypnotherapy in Maidstone. I'm a solution focused hypnotherapist. In terms of tips, sounds very simplistic, but try to look for some little positives in your day. And I can feel the looks like, really, it's that simple. But the brain decides what's important by what we pay attention to. So if we spend ages choosing an outfit for an event, our brain decides that's important. And when we walk in, we will spot that one person that's wearing the same dress as us instantly, because our brain knows it's important. And it's exactly the same. If we're looking for those little things that make us feel good, our brain will look out for them. So the world around us might not change, our symptoms might not change, but our perception of them changes. And that's really, really helpful.
Amazing, love that, thank you. Jo, give us a plug.
So Jo from All Health Matters, you've got the link from the webinar, and my advice is, in the next 7 days, put aside 30 minutes to look at our website so you can see all the links of the people that we work with closely, and just take time to read out a little bit about the menopause, a little bit about yourself, and don't feel guilty about that time. And then you know where we are if you've got any questions.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We've got so many people attending. It's really lovely to see. I hope that you've got something out of this. Thank you so much to all our amazing speakers. I've certainly learnt some stuff. I think it's been really interesting. We didn't even get to my last few questions, so we'll just have to do another one. But yes, thank you so much. I will share a copy of the recording for everyone that's attended, so you can share it with other people who might be interested. I'll share all the contact details of all our wonderful speakers. And if you want to find us online, if you go to allhealthmatters.co.uk/wellness clinics, then everyone's details there already. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for coming. We'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.